This meeting is being recorded.
Hi everyone, anyone that can hear me. I'm just going to give a minute or two for everyone to enter the chat room. So come on in. I'll just give a little bit of time for people to come in. Please remember to mute your mics and cameras because we are recording this event. Great to have so many people along. Really looking forward to this. Okay. So we're recording now and I hope everyone can hear me. If you have any problems, please do pop a comment in the chat. I'll give you some housekeeping rules or some suggestions anyway shortly. But for now, let's start the webinar proper and by basically welcoming you. Hello and welcome everyone to the first Writing WA webinar event for 2022. Thank you so much for joining us. It promises to be a fascinating insight into what I'm calling the writing genre for our times, flash fiction. My name is Carrie Cox. I'm the Communications Manager at Writing WA and I'll be your host for tonight. I'd like to start by acknowledging the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation as the traditional custodians of this country and its waters. Writing WA respects their continuing culture and the contribution they make to our city and our region. A few house rules before I introduce our guests this evening, who are waiting patiently for me to get through the formalities. Tonight's webinar is being recorded. So everyone, please use speaker view on your device and please keep those cameras and mics switched off. Now, there will be an opportunity to ask questions later in the session. So please pop any that you might have into the chat section and we'll try to get through as many as we can. Without further ado, I'd like to now welcome our guests this evening, Linda Martin and Laura Keenan, founders of the WA publishing firm Night Parrot Press. Thanks so much for being involved in this event, Linda and Laura. Everyone, this collective virtual clap, welcome. For those of you who don't know already, Night Parrot Press is an independent, not-for-profit publisher of non-traditional works of fiction and non-fiction, where experimental forms and genres outside the mainstream can find a home. And with several decades of senior editing, publishing, and creative writing education experience between them, I can assure you that Linda and Laura are the go-to experts when it comes to flash fiction, among many other things, but tonight, flash fiction. So I'm going to open things up, everyone, by asking with a very general sort of question. Laura, if I can start with you. In its simplest terms, what is flash fiction and where has it sprung from?
Great question, Carrie. Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here tonight. So yeah, what is flash? Flash fiction, it really is its own genre. It's short fiction that is generally under 1,000 words. Various publishers will ask for, different word counts and constraints, but generally speaking, it's stories under 1,000 words. But I think there's a lot of misconceptions about what flash is, and there's a lot of confusion. I think a lot of people hear flash and they think it's something that's written very quickly with very minimal effort. Fast fiction, like fast food or something, and it's definitely that's not what it is. As we'll kind of talk about during the session, there's different techniques that actually make it quite quite challenging. It's not something that's easy to write.
Laura, how long has it been
Yeah.
around, do you think? Is there a start date for this?
There's not a you know a pinpoint on the historical timeline, I can say, but you know, certainly in the last century, it's been around in various forms. I think you can look back in the 1920s. There was a Japanese writer by the name of Yasunari Kawabata, and he was writing these beautiful little crafted stories that were called palm of the hand stories. And they were, you know, a page and a half at most. And they were these really intricately crafted stories. You can look at Ernest Hemingway. He was sort of dabbling with it in various ways. There was a famous bet that he did, a 6-word novel. So it's been around for a while. And now when you look at sort of contemporary writers in the form, some big names, Lydia Davis, Kathy Fish, Nancy Stolman, you know, they're all around the world, which is the really exciting thing about Flash, is that it's really grown into this worldwide genre that people are really, you know, just accepting and trying to write, and we just think it's really fun and really enjoying it. So
thanks, Laura. That's so interesting to hear about that genesis and those early sort of you know, the sprouts of what we now know as flash fiction. It's so popular right now, and so Linda, I wondered if you could maybe talk about what's at the heart of its appeal.
Yeah, so it's become sort of really popular since the early this century, and I think there are a few things that that sort of make it more appealing and kind of just, you know, it increases to get more popular. Oh, by the way, hello everybody, thanks for having us here. But yeah, I think part of the appeal that comes with it is that, you know, we write stories to make sense of the world that we live in. So that's sort of, you know, always been the way. But I think the world we live in now, there's just so much going on. There's, you know, a lot that's really hard to make sense of. It's a bit of a crazy world. So I think in that sense, Flash works really well just to explore what's happening. And it's so immediate and you can do it so quickly. So, you know, because there is so much, you know, it's trying to get those thoughts around, you know, what's real and true and the kind of current state of humanity. Everything's a little more immediate and urgent. And, you know, if you look online, there are so many kind of discussions and everything. So, yeah.
I think that's right. We're so saturated with content now, you know, 24/7 on every platform. So Flash has that sort of cut through, you know, there's that cut through that where you can get sort of an instant connection with people. I know that many of us who love writing, and I'm sure a lot of the people tonight attending the webinar are people who love to write, probably love to read as well. And some of us who love writing have a tendency to overwrite, asking for a friend, especially when we're really passionate about a topic or a story. But the irony is we can actually say so much more with less. And I give the analogy, I listened to a podcast the other day where someone was giving a bit of a summary or a commentary about Twitter and how it's evolved. And we all got so excited when Twitter doubled its character count from 140 to 280 because we were going to get to say so much more. And yet a lot of people now say that the platform has kind of lost its appeal, it's lost that inadvertent poeticism, it's lost its edgy humour. So what is it about the brevity of flash fiction that is so powerful?
Yeah, I think what Flash does really well is that, you know, it does have these constraints, right? So you have these constraints and it's really forcing you as a writer to strip back to what is absolutely essential and necessary to your story and to your character. And I think there's a real strength in that, you know, and really choosing the very best words. And I think this is where you could say, it kind of borrows from poetry, in that sort of distillation of thought, and just that real, every word needs to earn its place in Flash. And I just think, when you're working against these constraints, some really beautiful things can happen when you're actually challenging yourself to write what really needs to be there. You just, you're cutting out all the flab. And I love this quote that we're actually borrowing from Susan Medallia, who's a very well-known WA writer who herself has been writing Flash recently. She likens it, like writing Flash is like wearing a corset. It can be constraining, but it makes a very pleasing shape. So it can feel maybe a little uncomfortable at first, and you think, how the hell am I going to write, a 500-word story and make sense of some idea or concept? But I think when you challenge yourself, it actually can lead to a beautiful result. And I think in that constraint process, as a writer, you have to leave out certain things. You have to leave out some background and backstory that is a luxury when you're writing a novel or a longer form, right? So with Flash, you have to jump in at a very immediate point in the story to grab your reader. And because of that, those gaps that are left, you're inviting your reader into a very collaborative process in the story, if that makes sense. So I think that's where the power lies, actually, because as a reader, you're having to bring your own, life experience and your own imagination to fill in those gaps. And I mean, a writer can only, do so much, but when you're asking a reader to bring their own elements in, I think that's where the poignancy happens, and when it really feels powerful as a reader as well.
And it's finding that balance too. So it's kind of being slightly ambiguous, but not too ambiguous, so that it's, So
it's that very
it is a balance.
It's that balance of reveal and disclosure and getting it just right.
And it's interesting you mentioned Susan Medallia, because I was going to ask, a lot of people think that flash fiction is kind of just a genre for people new to writing, like it's getting your training wheels on. But what can established writers get from it? If they want to go back and really hone their craft, what's flash fiction got for them as well?
Shall I take this one?
Yeah, you take that one. Take that one.
It's because it is a new genre, or a different genre. So it's, if you're used to, writing novels or something, it's really going back and really learning what flash is and understanding the constraints and, what's powerful about it, what's not. So it's great for established writers because it's just coming into telling a story from a very different perspective. It's really challenging because of that, not only sort of content wise, but also stylistically as well. So there are a lot of different challenges that the established writer can get a lot out of, I think.
I think it's almost like you're using sort of different writing muscles, if that makes sense. You're kind of you're learning how to play with narrative structure and disrupt it, and kind of play with it and have some twists and turns in there, and you're using some different muscles.
And I think too, because a lot of sort of approaches that we've learned in creative writing workshops, that we apply to our creative nonfiction or our fiction novels, short stories, or whatever. Flash sort of, you have to actually remove all of them and take all of them away. So it's kind of unlearning a lot of things as well, which is challenging.
Now, I think some of the people who've signed on today would love to come away with some practical tips, maybe even jot down a few notes. So I wanted to sort of break it down for a minute, if we could, and unpack it, for want of a better term. What are the key characteristics or elements of a really good piece of flash fiction?
Whew, that's a hard one. So these are general, and the beauty of flash fiction is there aren't sort of hard and fast rules.
Yeah.
So if we'll just sort of give some tips, you know,
Yeah.
I think what Laura was talking about before, definitely just kind of leaving those gaps. I think gaps are really important in flash fiction, so that there is that kind of reader engagement.
That trusting your reader. I think. Yeah.
Often, you know, you leave out background. Background's not important. There's not enough time to sort of fill in the backstory of your characters. So often you'll start right in the middle, right at that moment of crisis. Again, characters, you know, you can't make it too complicated. So there's generally just one or maybe two characters at the most.
Yeah.
But it's still, flash still has, I think good flash still has to have that tension. You know, there's some conflict or something in there. It still has to have some kind of subtext as well. So
it doesn't, and because I guess there isn't that true narrative arc that we all have learned about, so you're not going to have that, you might not have that resolution at the end of the story, but it should still feel compelling throughout, and I think that's important. It might not feel complete, but it should feel compelling.
Yeah. Shanae Maripodi actually had a great line. She said, the narrative arc is still there, but it's off the page.
Off the page, yeah.
Which I think is a really good way of putting it.
It is. Yeah.
Also, I think another thing about flash too is to really look at your ending. A lot of people try and wrap it up very neatly, sort of, you know, that idea of wrapping it up with a bow. That doesn't work for flash. So often you'll look back and sort of, you know, often just take out that last line, because we just naturally want to wrap it up, make it really complete.
Yeah.
But again, that will sort of come out. And another thing about flash is that it tends to follow a sort of traditional story, but then it will just pivot slightly at the end in a different direction.
Yeah.
Not all the time, but
not all the time.
Often.
Yeah. But no. Go ahead.
Keep going, Laura.
Oh no, it was just, and yeah, like we were talking about that, you know, if you think about, sort of an iceberg, you know, and you kind of only see that tip of it, that's kind of how flash works as well. And, you know, you see that top bit, but it's all your subtext that's underneath that should be implied and felt quite strongly. It's there, but it's implicit. So you need to just leave, we like to say, you just leave little breadcrumbs of that mixing metaphors, icebergs and baking, but you leave the breadcrumbs, but you don't drop the whole loaf.
Yeah.
So,
going back to the iceberg metaphor, which worked for me really well. So there's a lot going on under the water. Does that mean that still, you know, with this genre, it could still be either character driven or plot driven? You know, is there a rule there, or do you see one more in flash fiction?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think again, because there's not that luxury of space and time with telling your story, I think it tends to, be more character driven, because, you're sort of focusing in on these little idiosyncrasies or, you know, things that are happening between two characters, the interaction, and that's sort of more of your focus than a plot.
Yeah, great. We've got a question from Fiona, and I just want to let Fiona Evans know. She's asked, can you give examples of online flash that demonstrates what you were talking about? And Fiona, I'm happy to report that both Laura and Linda have brought in a piece of flash tonight that they're going to read to us a bit later on, and that really will demonstrate some of the elements that we're talking about. So that is going to happen. Great question, thanks. Here's a different kind of question. Can flash be funny?
Yes. Absolutely. It can definitely be funny. And actually the story that I'm going to read as my example later, I find absolutely funny. And I think, yeah, I think Flash tends towards the sort of satirical and, ironic, type of humor. Generally, it's something that will make you kind of work for it. And there's often that kind of shining a light on a bit of a dark humor, sort of a bit of an underbelly of human connection or experience that maybe we all have experience with, but it'll just kind of shine a different angle, a different light on it that it's funny, but maybe darkly funny.
And sort of often magnify our absurdities as well, which is
absolutely,
I think happens a lot in Flash. So
terrific. A common piece of advice about writing traditional fiction that I've been told many times is write what you know. Is that advice a bit limiting for Flash fiction? And what advice would you give to people struggling to find the right topic?
I think as writers, we all sort of gravitate towards writing, something that we've experienced or that we know about, because it feels comfortable, it feels like something we might have some authority on. But I often find that Flash that explores topics that, the authors probably have no connection with or experience with, can be really, really powerful and surprising. And I guess I'm kind of thinking back to a piece that I wrote several years ago, and it's actually based on a personal experience. So there we go. But it was a topic that, so I was living with a family whose son had a heart transplant, and he was a surfer, and he had this sort of experience when he was surfing and kind of collapsed, and they found out he needed a new heart, had the heart transplant. And I just, the summer that I stayed with them and got to know the family and him, I could not stop thinking about the fact that he had someone else's heart, and as a non-medical person, have no, and I did very little research when I wrote the story that was based on this boy, but kind of flipped it so it became a girl that received a boy heart. And I loved that idea of exploring something that, I had absolutely no reference for with any authority. And I think just surprising things can happen when you kind of take a look at something that you don't have any knowledge about.
And I think it's sort of write what you're curious about or write what you're passionate about. So it doesn't necessarily have to be what you know, but just what's driving you.
Absolutely.
So in that sense, it's a pretty liberating genre. There's a lot of freedom there.
I think so.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, you can just really, pick up, you might be sitting in a cafe and you overhear some snippet of conversation about something. I'm like, God, I'd love to know more about that, and then just explore it and see where it takes you.
Now, again, for those participants tonight who are looking for some takeaways, some practical advice, I wanted to ask you, what are some, and you're both, such experienced creative writing educators, so I'm hoping you'll have some tips on some good writing exercises or stretches that someone can do before they start diving into Flash fiction.
Yeah, I always just love stream of consciousness, just to, as a good warm up, just 5 minutes or a couple of minutes of just whatever comes. But I think, like we were talking about, just something that you're curious about, just explore that. You don't have to write a story about it, but just explore what it is. What did that text mean that person sent, and just kind of get that down on paper. And another thing to do, because Flash, you don't include the background of your character. So a warm-up might be just write down that background of the character, and then that gets it out of the way. So then when it comes to writing your Flash piece, you can just start without any of that background.
Yeah.
I think that's yes. And have you got any others?
Yeah, no, I just think just
Start.
but just be, like you said, just be attuned to things around you, on your daily walk, at the cafes, just take little things in that seem inconsequential
And write them down.
and write them down, or write a question that you're curious to answer, and see what it leads to.
Yeah, and I think too, just also imagine something that's ordinary and put it in a very unusual context.
Yeah.
And just to, think about those things as well. What would, yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. There's some great tips there. I also wanted to ask, how important is the editing process or the self-editing process in flash fiction? I mean, obviously, self-editing is implicit, in this genre, but how important is that part in contrast to the writing part? Like, how do you compare if you spent, 2 hours writing a piece of flash fiction, would you expect to do the same on editing, or how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, I can't put like a number, to how much time you'll spend on editing, but it's such an important part of Flash as well, because I think, that idea of, kill your darlings. So if you have, a line that you just really, really love and you really want to keep, I would just say, make sure that you read it out loud and just, if it's not sounding right out of your mouth, it shouldn't be there. If you're stumbling over anything in your flash, it shouldn't be there. And just remember, this really is a distillation process. You're trying to get the very best essence of a story. And so, you really cut it back as far as it can.
Yeah, I always find it useful too, to write it, go back the next day. So I'll sort of look at my pieces for about at least 10 times, really, before I send it off anywhere. And, and try and leave a week in between. And then even when I've done that and I think it's word perfect and there's, every single word has earned that place in my story, then I'll give it to Laura to edit and she'll find more. So, I think it takes a really long time, and I think that's something as well. People just think because it's short, it's really quick,
and easy.
I think it actually requires more editing, because you can, with a longer form, you can get away with a lot more. But as again Susan Medallia says, there's nowhere to hide in flash fiction. It's just
it is.
And you're talking about the benefit of a fresh set of eyes, and that leads me to that question of is flash fiction writing a good genre to be shared? So is it a good idea, for example, to join or to form a little writing group of flash fiction writers?
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely.
There's some great I've done a few of the online, because it's flash fiction's a really international community, and a very generous and supportive one. It's a great community. And I've done a lot of, a few of the online ones, and they're brilliant because it's so small. Because the stories are so small, you can sort of share your story and get feedback on that story in the same day. It's fantastic. And I think
it's usually, so supportive, those groups.
And I learned so much from reading other people's writing as well. It's stuff that you can't really say, but just through reading it, you sort of pick up on those sort of tips and approaches, and just learn so much. So if anyone's interested in Flash, I'd really encourage you to
So where does a newcomer find those online groups? How do you set about finding them?
Yeah, there's lots of groups on Facebook and Twitter. They're out there, and I would just Google them and see what's out there.
Also Google online workshops. So there's 3 that I can think of. Kathy Fish, she does them, she's amazing. Nancy Stallman, Meg Pokras, she kind of pretty much runs them continually. And there's also a couple of Facebook sites, Flash Fiction Lovers, which is all things Flash. They give prompts, there are competitions, it's an international community. But again, that's a really great place to go to sort of find out what's happening, but also just to read other people's Flash stories as well.
Yeah. There seems to be a lot of competitions held in the Flash fiction space, which is great. And I want to make a little mention of our own Flash fiction competition for Love to Read Local Week that we've got coming up. Well, it's currently happening. I think submissions finish on the 28th of April, and that's a partnership between Night Parrot Press and Writing WA, and all the details are on our website. So that's a great competition, but there are so many. So what is your advice on, which competitions to enter? Do you enter all of them? How do you pick them? Do you sort of start with domestic, or do you throw international in the mix? What's your advice?
My advice is go everywhere. Definitely throw international in the mix.
Yeah.
There's some, there's some brilliant ones that often there's some that pay sort of, have good sort of prize monies. London Independent Flash Fiction Story, Reflex Fiction, Bath Flash Fiction, and actually a lot of WA Flash writers have been really successful in getting prizes and in these competitions. So yeah, definitely go international, but also local.
There are some over east. There's once a month the Australian Writers Centre. They do the first Friday of every month. It's called the Furious Fiction
I think so.
Prize, and basically you have 55 hours to write a 500-word story, and the winner receives $500. So yeah, there's some really fun ones out there.
There's also an international one that it's for a 100-word story, and the winner gets US $20,000.
So that's definitely worth doing.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's the sort of prompt is the use of dialogue as a tool to achieve peace between different cultures and religions.
Oh,
Yeah.
I love that.
The stories are beautiful.
Yeah, I think it's based in Spain, and it's called the probably going to butcher this, but the Cesar Ejido Serrano Foundation Museum of Words Prize.
Yeah, so that's really cool. But we love the Love to Read Local flashing the cover competition. It's great. So definitely start there.
Thanks. And speaking of that, I left off a very important piece of information. A co-partner in that, besides your good selves, is Rain Square, who are kindly providing again some fantastic prizes for that competition. So all the details are on our website and on social media from you guys and our guys. It's all over the place. But thank you to you and to Rain Square. Now we've got a question too. I might just throw this in the mix before I keep going with my questions from Daff. Daff wants to know, do you think flash fiction is suited to any particular genre? And so I guess, she means, crime, thriller, romance, can it be applied to anything, virtually anything?
I would say yes, absolutely. I think I think it can go across genre. We haven't seen, I'm trying to think what we haven't seen much of, because we've seen speculative fiction, not a lot of romance. I think it's always, again, it's that kind of, it usually takes a bit of a satirical spin on a genre maybe. So
historical flash is really interesting. There's a great Irish writer, Nuala O'Connor, and she writes just beautiful historical flash. So I think it's the form allows all sorts of
absolutely, and we've been doing workshops with even primary school children up to high school, and they're great at writing flash. So it really is it's pretty open in that way.
Great.
That you can write across it.
No limits. Fantastic.
yes.
Now I did, as I mentioned before, I did ask you both to bring along a piece of flash fiction that you particularly love, and maybe if you could read that out and explain why. I think that'd really be great to sort of demonstrate some of the things we've talked about tonight. Who'd like to go first?
Shall I go first?
You want to go first?
We can
Yes.
end on
That sounds good.
yours, which is a beautiful piece. So, so I have to put my glasses on for this. So, so the one I'm reading is actually the writer. His name is Robert Vaughan, and he was actually one of the judges for the Bath Flash Fiction competition. So he's been writing flash for quite a long time. But this is his piece. He's an American writer. This is his piece called "What's Left Unsaid." He turned the car off, exhausted. The drive had seemed endless, hours elongated like taffy. He stretched his arms behind his head, challenged his burning eyes to stay open. In the distance, he could see the wisp rising from their sugar house chimney. He figured she'd be up already. A crack of dawn slipped through the pillowed clouds, more dark than light. He loped toward the house, opened the kitchen door, set his bags down. As he crossed the pasture, Serena whinnied inside the barn. She always sensed when he was close. He paused under a maple, looked down at his calfskin Tony Lamars, wondered how he might explain blowing all their retirement savings in Vegas. Maybe he could work more overtime, save up again. Then he wouldn't have to tell her. Yeah.
Wow.
And I think this story is a great example because it is very short. It's 140 words, but there's so much in there. He's kind of given a lot of gaps or a lot of white space where the reader can come in and just fill that in. And I read somewhere that he actually started this story. So he did, going back to your earlier question about write what you know, he did grow up on a farm and he had this kind of sugar house. So he's kind of just had that image and then, gone with that idea and kind of created this story. But this story also shows how with flash fiction, just the use of literary device is so important. And he just uses some beautiful ones in this story just to really set the scene and just give a lot of those breadcrumbs as to what's happening in that relationship, the whole subtext, his gambling problem, all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, because he never names the partner, the woman, does he?
Yeah.
He names the horse, Serena, which I think is but he doesn't even need to say, her name, the woman, and it's just but so much is beneath that iceberg, right? There's so much.
Because the picture he presents is beautiful and just it's just looks so happy. Everyone's kind of dream home. But all of that stuff that's happening beneath the surface and
because
his inability to communicate with his wife and deal with his problems and
buying those damn Tommy Llama's shoes.
Thanks so much, Linda. That was wonderful. And before I throw over to you, Laura, for your story, I just wanted to invite people maybe to start now to put some questions, to put more questions in the chat if they want to. Equally, they may find that we're covering everything, and that's fine. But if you do, please feel free to start popping them in now. Laura, what did you bring to the table tonight?
So I'm going to read a story that I absolutely adore. It's by a WA writer, Alison Davis, and she came third place in the Writing WA Flash Comp for last year with this story. And her inspiration for the story was the cover of Elizabeth Tan's book, Smart Ovens for Lonely People, which if you haven't read this collection of short stories, please do, because they are just the most amazing. She kind of has some magic realism going on, and there's just the most beautiful images that she creates in these stories. So I encourage you to read that book. But Alison's story is called Frozen, and it's only 100 words. When Hannah's cat died, she stored his body in the chest freezer just until she could make funeral arrangements. Wedged between the peas and an ancient chicken casserole, his earnest face looked up at her every time she lifted the lid. Sometimes, late in the evening, she lifted him out and cradled him on her lap. returning him to his icy home only when he began to thaw. One night, she couldn't sleep, and she climbed right in beside him. That's where her husband found her. He stored her body there, just until he could make funeral arrangements.
Oh.
Oh my gosh.
It's just so amazing about the story is that, she's taken this idea of, we've all, not everyone has had a pet, but if you've had a pet that you just, love beyond words, and the pet dies and you just can't let go of that memory of that pet. And it's just, she's taken that idea a bit too far. It's that idea of, she's keeping this cat in this freezer and still trying to pet it at night. And then it just goes on this absolutely unexpected, sort of absurd, turn of events when she climbs in and then the husband finds her and then the cat and the woman are both in there. And it's just, I find it hilarious, It's a very humor, but I think it's just pitch perfect. Like I wouldn't change a word in that story. And it's spot on. I think in 100 words, she's told, an amazing story.
Yeah, I know. When you first sent it to me, I found it I laughed out loud, and then I thought, oh, am I not meant to be laughing out loud?
Yeah,
This is brave. So there's just a lot going on there. It's so powerful.
There's a lot going on, but it's just like certain words that she chose, like his earnest face, like staring up at her. It's just in the ancient chicken casserole. Like we all have that ancient thing in our freezer, like over like it's just the word choices are just spot on.
Yeah, that's such a lovely example. Thanks, Laura. They're both lovely examples. I'm just going to attend to a few questions now. I'm going to go back to one from earlier. This one doesn't have a name that says, do you have suggestions as to what you can do with your flash fiction? I write one each day, so I have hundreds. Where does she put them, or he put them?
You gotta submit them. You gotta get them published, or at least try. I don't know. I think just
Yeah. I mean, again, just going back to that, join those kind of
the group.
Flash fiction lovers on Facebook if you're on social media.
Yeah, share them with other writers.
Yeah, but there is so much online. I would just be sending them out anywhere you can to have them published or entering competitions.
Yeah.
And
if you find that they have a bit of a common thread or theme, I think you could even consider there is such thing as a flash novella, which is a collection of flash stories that do have a common thread, sort of weaving them together. That could be a potentially interesting project for them. And
once a year, Night Parrot Press puts out a collection of flash fiction as well. So
send them to us.
Yes.
We'd love to read them.
So how do people submit to you? Do they go onto your website?
Well, so at the moment, it's just the two of us. So we are doing anthologies, once a year. So unfortunately, we have just closed entries for our next anthology, but we will be doing one again next year. But if you do have an interesting sort of flash novella or something in the works, send it our way and we can have a little look at it.
Do you have any titles of flash novellas that people might be able to Google and find online to read if they're interested in that idea of a novella?
Yes. One of my favorites is called We the Animals by Justin Torres. That's Torres. He's an American writer. It's a really amazing, it reads, like a complete story, a little novella, but each story can stand on its own. Each sort of, each chapter is its own story, and they're just beautiful. They're really lovely about this crazy family, this boy growing up with like 5 or 6 brothers. It's beautiful.
Now, Melanie has asked, hi everyone, how much importance would you place on the title for flash fiction? That's a great question, Melanie. Thank you.
That's a very good question. Titles play a big part in flash fiction. There's often, if you particularly if there's a word limit, your title can be really long.
Yeah, because usually the title doesn't count in the word count.
Yeah.
So you could have a 300-word title.
Yeah,
exactly.
All that backstories in the title.
I love that idea. 300-word title, and then just the story is just one word.
One word.
I love that. Okay, let's do that. Yeah, but no, it does. It has a lot, and often too, you can leave that. We talked before about the story will kind of follow an arc and then just kind of pivot at the end. Sometimes you can have that pivot in the title and kind of fill in the backstory, or you can really play with the title a lot.
Yeah, or if the title is like this really big contrast to what the story is, and they play off of each other, that often works really well. You'll expect something from the title and then just completely go in a different direction with the story. Yeah.
We've got another great question here. This one's from Melita. Hope I've pronounced that correctly, Melita. Might be Melita. Do you have a suggestion for good places to gather feedback on your stories? The trust regarding receiving feedback from people on social media who may or may not be the best source of critique.
Yeah, I think that's also where those online workshops are really good. We ran one, I think it was last year now, wasn't it? A 6-week workshop. We had 20 people, and it was great because, yes, you do want that kind of trust and, and kind of, support. So I think if you can join any of those online workshops, that's where you'll find it.
And just if you have that trusted reader or a writing friend who you really trust, just have someone else read it. But
like a writing buddy, like a buddy system sort of thing.
That person that you always share your stories with. But
maybe we could get the Flash Fiction fan club back up again.
We actually have the Facebook one.
Leave that one with us. We might do that, even if it's just so that our WA community can just
can start
sharing
stories.
But of course you want to make it private too, because you don't want it. If you're looking to get it published as well, once it's in the public domain, it won't be published. So you have to be careful about that as well, and just make it a closed group.
Good point.
Great. Melita said a Flash Fiction fan club sounds fab.
Good.
A lot of alliteration there. That's great. Daph's asked again now, how many pieces would you expect to produce from a 6-week workshop? Good question.
We, with ours, so it was actually 6 pieces. So we'd read a piece.
And then have a prompt.
Or read a few pieces. Have a prompt. And then, the participants would write it, and then, the following week read it out, so they'd have time to edit and share. So but then there are others, that run for 10 days, and you'll write 10, 10 flash pieces.
I think it depends on the format, really. But I think you can expect at least 6 good pieces to come out of something like that.
For you two personally, when you write a piece of flash these days, are you likely to get it down in one sitting? I mean, obviously you've done the thinking and the planning, or are you likely to do it in installments, or how does it work best?
It takes me a long time. I mean, the workshops that we hold, I'm always amazed what some people can write in just, in
a week.
Or
less than a week.
10 minutes even, at the workshops. It's just like, wow. I think it depends on the individual. It takes me a really long time, but I think also that's my background as an editor. I tend to overthink everything. So
Me too.
Just
you say it like it's a bad thing. It's not a bad thing.
But it's a bit of a curse.
It is.
No, it's very rare that I write something in one go that I'm happy with. Very rare.
Going back to that suggestion you made, Laura, about We the Animals by Taurus Justin Was it Justin
Yeah.
Torres?
Justin Torres. Yeah.
Natalie has just noted that it was made into a film as well.
Apparently it was, and I haven't seen it, and I want to see it. Oh my gosh, that's so exciting. I wonder if was that just recently? I
Well,
did.
No,
I feel
I'll
like
have
I
to
did.
look that up. Thanks for the tip, Natalie. That's great.
That's great. Yeah.
She said it's 2018.
Okay. Gosh, I missed it.
Now,
Um,
Melanie's
some
asked. Sorry, Linda. I cut you off.
Oh no, I was just going to say some writers too write flash memoir, so which is also really great. So 52 sort of memoiric stories, which is another approach as well. Anyway, sorry, over to you.
No, that's great. Is it acceptable, this is from Melanie, if the flash fiction sounds or reads more like poetry or what we know of as poetry?
Yeah, that's a tricky one. And I think a lot of people ask this question because I think there are so many similarities with flash and poetry, but I think it was one of our participants and one of the writers that's been in our anthologies, Lizzie Bakewell. I'm going to borrow from her and say the way that she kind of distinguished between poetry and flash, I thought was so interesting. So for her, a poem was like a snapshot or a photo. So it's kind of capturing a moment in time as an image, whereas with flash, it's more like a short film. So you have that sense of movement, which is the narrative really, right? Which is how I think it's good to think about poems and flash fiction. Poems feel a bit more static or sort of suspended in a time and place, whereas I think flash, it needs to have a sense of movement. Even if that movement might be psychological for a character, I think it needs to have a sense of narrative movement, if that makes sense. Yeah, I don't know if that's helpful, but I loved that idea from her. Thanks, Lizzie.
Great. I just wanted to let everyone know the time's gone fast. We've got 5 minutes left. So if anyone's got has been shy about sneaking in their question, wait no longer, sneak it on in. And because we will have to wrap up soon. But I want to remind everyone too that we are recording this session tonight, and it will be available probably early next week on our YouTube channel. So you'll be able to watch it again, share it with friends far and wide, and write down those tips that you might have missed. I'm interested to know from you guys, Linda and Laura, where we're placed, because this is an international genre that's so buzzy and busy at the moment. How is Australia, going on that scene? Are we sort of punching above our weight? Are we big contributors to the scene? How do we fit in? And also, on a layer below that, what about WA in relation to the rest of the country? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well,
that's a great question.
Yeah, but sort of, like we mentioned earlier, a lot of our WA writers are winning those big international flash fiction prizes.
Yeah,
so
Gillian O'Shaughnessy has won some great international. Roz Thomas, she's won one as well recently.
Yeah.
Lizzie Bakewell. Yeah. So I think
Nikki Blake. Yeah, there are quite a few.
Yeah.
So, and I don't think distance makes any sort of difference.
Yeah.
Distance, no difference.
No.
Yeah. And I think too the standard that we have in WA is really strong. Yeah.
No, I mean I think there's not that many print publications of flash. So most of the competitions and the journals are online, and for that reason it just makes everything so accessible and almost seamless in terms of where things are happening now. I think it kind of started off, the big contenders were US and the UK, but now I would just say it's everywhere now, which is so exciting. So,
and in fact, that was the reason we started Night Parrot, because we ran some workshops on flash fiction, And the quality of writing that came out of those workshops was really terrific.
Yeah.
And we didn't know what to do with them, but we knew that they had to be, you know, they should be published. So that's how Night Parrot came about. Yeah.
Well, that's actually a lovely way to conclude, because I think that it's you guys and Night Parrot Press are so much a reason, a part of the success of WA in this space, and the reason that we are doing so well and winning these big prizes. It's what you contribute to the sector, and how much confidence and skills and forums you give to the people who are really keen. And I think it's indicative, you know, in terms of how many people signed up for tonight's session, just how popular it is. And we're getting some lovely comments from people about, you know, just how much they've got from tonight. They're all thanking you very, very much, saying it was a great conversation. Thank you for your time and your insights. It's been helpful. Thank you, ladies. Thank you very much. There's so many. I want to officially thank you on behalf of Writing WA for your time and your insight this evening and ongoing. We really, really appreciate it. And I want to thank everyone who has attended tonight for giving up an hour of your time on a Thursday night just before Easter. And I hope everyone does have a really safe and happy holiday or break moving ahead. Laura and Linda, is there anything else you'd like to throw in at the end that I haven't covered?
Oh, I don't think so. It's so great to see so many people interested in flash fiction. Like that just makes us happy. So we're so thrilled.
And we love this community too. So keep a look out on our socials, because I think we need to talk about this flash fiction fan club.
I think we need to bring it back.
Revive.
I think so. Yeah. Bring it back.
But
we just hope everyone, just, you know, start writing, just jump in and give it a go. And and start sending them out and seeing what happens. Because I think there's so many opportunities.
Yeah, we've also got a blog on our website too, and we're actually in the process of just writing up a list of where people can send their flash, locally and internationally and nationally. So so have a look on there as well.
What's your website again, just so that everyone knows it's all fresh?
It's www.nightparrotpress.com.
Fantastic. And I'll throw in ours as well, in case people are still curious about that competition that they should enter before April 28th. That's writingwa.org. Bravo, Laura and Linda. Thank you so much for a wonderful session. And
thank you, Carrie. Thanks, Carrie, for your great questions. Thank you.
And the audience and Writing WA.
Yeah, thanks so
all
much.
Your support. Thank you.
All right. Good evening, everyone.